My name is John Brouillard, and welcome to this webinar titled Overview of Report Writer. I'm one of the specialists in the Report Writer group. I've been here for over 20 years, and I'll be presenting for you today. Just a few notes before we really get started with the presentation. The first thing is I will be sending out a packet once I receive the email addresses from the attendees of this meeting. And I will send out the packet by email, which contains all the slides and all the information that we're presenting in this webinar. So you really don't need to take notes. You can just sit back and relax and just listen. And I will also be stopping a few times during the presentation for questions. So if you have any questions on the presentation, then you can chat them to me. I see, as I was waiting to start this, some of you have raised your hand. Like I was saying, I'm kind of new to the Zoom product, so I don't know how to use it beyond the what I was taught so far. So I don't know how to address raised hands. I just look at the chat to see if there's any questions that were made there. So again, if you have questions, send them to me using the chat feature, and I'll review them during the question and answer section. All right, so what are we trying to accomplish with this webinar? Well, we want to help you, the customer, have a good understanding of what the Report Writer tool is. How the Report Writer tool can be used at your site, what this tool can do. We'll cover some other aspects like running, downloading, attaching to menus, reports. And we'll also look at the education that's out there to effectively use the Report Writer tool. All right, so here is the agenda. So first thing we'll cover is we will define what the Report Writer is. So I'll define what Report Writer is, and then we'll take a quick look at the tool itself. So I'll go over the screens, which you'll see there's only a few. I'll show the screens, or the tabs, as they're called, and then we'll run a sample report. I'll take a sample report. It's an admissions report, and we'll run it from the Report Writer tool, and that will be our first look. And then we'll answer the question, why would you use Report Writer? And to answer that, we'll look at 4 different report examples, each with their each different, so you kind of get an idea of the types of reports that can be created. And then we'll look at the available training and education that you need to effectively support this tool. And then we'll look at some additional online resources that are available to you when using this Report Writer tool. So what is Report Writer? Well, Report Writer is a 4th generation tool and it's used to access the information that's stored in the database. So we use it to write custom reports. Now, it's a programming tool that allows you access to that data that's stored, and it can pull data from multiple applications. So we might have a report that's written in the admissions application, but we could then pull data out of pharmacy, maybe the patient's meds. We could pull information out of lab, for example, test results, and we could also pull information out of billing, the patient's balance and things like that. So it's a programming tool that allows us to pull data onto and to make custom reports. So at this point, what I'd like to do is just leave the presentation and show you the Report Writer tool. So I have on my menu, my customization menu, access to process reports, which brings me to the process report screen where I can enter the name of the report. So to show you the tool itself, I'm going to use this report. It's adm.pat. zcus.mt.webex. First look. So when you pull up a report using the tool, if this was a brand new report, it would actually bring me right into the screen at the first page of the report itself, thinking it was, it's a brand new report. But this is an existing, so it stops here, and then I can go into the report itself using one, enter, edit. So when I get into the report itself, it brings me to the first tab. And let me just add at this point that even though this presentation is for all applications, we are presenting in client server, which would be the same as 6X. The screens might look slightly different in Magic, but they are technically the same. So in Magic, we don't have the tabs up here. We just have page 1, 2, 3, and 4. So even though they look different, the same information is in the screens, and this webinar applies to all the platforms. All right, so when we get into the report, it brings us to the general page. And the general page is where we define the name of the report. So this top portion shows the report name and the title. The title would appear on the top of every page if we printed out a banner. The next section is the files that we would pick to write our report. So we call those the detail, segment, and index file. So these are the files we've chosen that contains our data. All right, below that, characters per line, characters per inch, and those are the page characteristics that we can define. Okay. And below that is the regions we can define. So we can have page headers, page trailers, report header, report trailer, and so on. This one prompt here, detail, that prompt is set up so we can either have a detailed report, and we're going to see examples of this. We can set this up to be a detailed report, meaning we're going to see the detailed information. If I said no to that detailed prompt, we would then be building a statistical report where we're not interested in seeing each individual record, we're just interested in seeing the statistical data, totals, averages, etc. This documentation part on this screen is a place where you can document what this report should be used for, who should be editing, any in-house documentation that you see fit. All right, the second tab of the Report Writer tool is called the Sort Selects tab. And this is broken down into two sections. The top portion would be your sorting. What order do you want your records to appear in? And that's what is controlled here. So right now we're sorting our records first by facility, then by the status type, then by the date, then the time, and then the URN of the record. URN just stands for a unique record number. And we teach that in the class. All right, so this is the order that the record's output in. The second part of the screen is the selection portion. And that's basically setting up the criteria that a record needs to pass in order to be selected on the report. All right, so we're selecting on a date range. So the date would have to be within the range specified by the user running the report. So as you can see, there's a from date and a through date prompt that's going to be part of this report. And the report is also putting the condition the age on the record has to be greater than 65. So when we run this report, you're actually going to see that there's a date prompt selection, but there's no selection on age. That age selection or condition has been hard-coded into the report, meaning it's always going to run for that condition, and the end user has no control over it. The only control the end user will have will be the date range the report's run for. And that's by design. All right, the third tab is what we call the picture tab. And this is where we actually build the picture of how the output should look like. All right, so the top two lines are labeled HP. That's a page header region. So if I go back to the general tab, we can see that a Y was entered for the page header. And therefore, we get an HP region. And we have two lines of HP. We've added a second line. This HP region is only outputting free text. It's the column headings for the information that's going to print in the detail region, that D region. The D region is a region that prints for each record. Okay, so in our case, where each record is a patient, so for each patient, it's going to output the account number, the unit number, the date, and the age. So also on this picture tab, we have, of course, that big white box is the picture. This tall, thin box on the left-hand side is the regions. But down at the bottom of the page, where my cursor is hovering, that's the field section of the picture page. So when we add the fields to the field section, so we have the unit, actually have one above it, account number, unit number, date, and then the age field, fourth. We add the fields to the field section, and then we attach them to the picture where we want them to display. All right, so that's the picture tab. And then the footnotes tab is a topic we cover in our level 2 training, and we'll get to the training available later in this presentation. This is, again, a level 2 topic, but we can apply things to the entire report using the footnotes section. This is a place where we can call macros. Again, macros are also taught in level 2. But these apply to the whole report. All right, so those are the 4 tabs that make up the tool. A lot you can do in these tabs, but this is in a intro or an overview of what Report Writer is. Those are the 4 tabs or 4 pages that make up the tool. I'm just going to exit the report now, and we can run this report directly from the Report Writer tool using option number 5. So when I run this, admissions is a multi-facility application. So just as if you were signing into admissions, it would prompt you for the facility. The same thing here. This is actually outside of the Report Writer tool. It's because we're trying to access or link to the admissions application. So it's going to prompt for the facility. And that's true for any multi-facility application. So I'll just pick the first one. And now we see that we have our date range. Our selection had the date range and the age criteria. We're only prompted for the date range because we set that selection up as a prompt. The other one on the age is hard-coded, and we have no control over it, being an end user at this point. In order to run this, I have to do a large date range, T-600 through T-1200. 300, I think, should work. I'm just going to preview the output. And so you can see now our output. The very first two lines, that makes up the page banner. And on the general tab, we said we actually had reg defined as the page banner, the regular page banner. The first two lines are the HP lines, and then this is the detail line outputting for each record, each patient. Okay. So why would we use Report Writer? Well, to answer this question, we're going to now look at some additional report examples. We're going to look at 4 types. And the 4 types are listed here. We're going to look at a list detail report, which in essence is what we just looked at. We're listing out the details of all the patients that met that criteria. But we're going to see an additional example of that. We'll look at a summary report, which is a statistical report. We're just looking at totals and averages or percentages on that report. We'll take a look at a label report. I think it's a med label. And we'll also look at a report that's been set up for downloading. So I've added 4 reports to my user menu. So here's my menu, my custom menu, and I have listed webinar reports. And under my webinar report submenu, I have these 4 reports. So right there, you can see how we can, number one, we can run a report directly from the Report Writer tool. I don't have to add it to a menu in order to run it. However, not everyone has access to the tool, so we then have the ability to put reports that users need onto their menu. So the first report I'll run from here is the detailed list report. And again, this looks very similar to the one we just ran. In fact, I'll run it for the same date range. It looks similar, but there are some differences. First thing you notice is we have some graphics. So we have some white box and a gray box. So the banner now, these very first 2 lines of the output, are in a white box. The column headings, I don't know if it's visible on the presentation, but is actually a gray box. And then the detail is, again, then back in a white box. So we've added graphics and boxes to this report. You'll also, it might not be visible, but the column headings are actually printing in bold. well, maybe it's not the column headings, but we also have down here total. And this box at the bottom, this total box, is also gray. So we can see that we're printing the number of the total number of seniors 65 or older, and this report also prints the total patients that were on the report. So this report allows the ages, any age. This one was not restricted by age, but it counts for us the number of patients that were older than 65. There were 26, and that number 26 is actually printed in bold. So again, illustrating another, function of the report writer tool. We can make certain text bold, bold, italics, underline, combinations of, and we can apply graphics. All right, so that is an example of our detail report. Again, detail meaning we're seeing each record, information about each record. Our next report is a summary report. Okay. This report is written in abstracting. Okay, so this report's written in the abstracting module, and all it shows is totals at the end. So this is your statistical type report. If we were to look at this report, we would see that the detail prompt on the first tab was set to no, and that means we're not going to have that D region available for outputting record information. However, we'll be gathering the information to calculate the totals, so the total number of patients, the total number of patients with a certain diagnosis code. There were 13 with that particular diagnosis code, 428.0. And then the total number of patients with that other diagnosis code was 0 in this case. So then we have averages. So the percent of patients with the first diagnosis code was 8.66%. So again, we're not seeing individual record information. We're just seeing the statistical information about the records that were pulled. So this is our second type, summary report. This message that you see here, record limit 150 reach, that's a tool that that's a field we can use in selection. So basically we can have the report stop after finding 150 records for our sample. Since this is just a training, I put that in so that this report wouldn't take too long to run. It stops after 150 records and gives us the information based on those 150 records. That selection field would then be removed to make this a live version, meaning it would actually complete with all the records before displaying that message. All right, so that was our second version of summary report. Another type that I'm going to show is a labeled report. So this is a pharmacy label. Now this report has no selection, so once you run it, it just kicks off. Now, a lot of these types of labels can be attached to a routine within the application. So this might be, this label might generate off of a routine within the pharmacy application. We have set it here just to show you, if this report were run and printed, this is what that label would look like. Now you can see from the label or the information printing that dose, 250 milligrams, is actually printing large. It's large and bold. So this might be the reason for the custom. We do have several standard versions of labels, but possibly the goal was to have the same information print, but with the dosage much larger, so there's no room for confusion, and hence the custom. So examples of labels would be your wristband, armband labels. Labels could have barcodes or with or without barcodes. And this, I think, is an inpatient label or med label. So typically, you would not just run it to preview. These would go to a label printer, and since I don't have one here, I didn't send it. I just sent it to preview. All right, and our last example is a download report. So there are two types of download reports. There's fixed length and variable length. So a variable length would be where, I might have the patient's name print first, and then followed by the date of birth. Well, someone with a long name would take up more room than someone with a short name. So right after the name field would print the date of birth, and there would be something separating the two values. But the point is, the date of birth will not line up because everybody's name is a different length. So when they don't line up, that's a variable length report. When everything stays lined up in columns, we call that a fixed length report. We'll take a look at the output of this. And this is a variable length, so you can, everything is lining up, but it's actually a variable length. It just happens the fields we're using are fixed length. We have moved this training to another ring, the one we used to do it in. They deleted recently. So my sample pool from this new ring is not the greatest, but you can see I have several records. Each value from each record, each field I should say, this would be the account number, and it's enclosed in quotes. Then the second field is the service date, admitter service date, and as you can see, everything's printing enclosed in quotes, and each field value is separated by this semicolon. We call that our delimiter. Now, when this file could now be uploaded into another vendor software, for instance, Excel, and we could specify to the Excel program that our fields are separated by that semicolon, so that when these records upload into Excel, they'll be, each value will go into its appropriate cell. All right, so this is an example of a download report. And we can specify within the report that delimiter, what character will be used. We can specify whether quotes should appear around each value or no quotes. A lot of times a third-party vendor will have these specifications predefined, and we just have to build the report to match those specifications. All right, so those are the 4 example reports, and kind of give you some, why would you use Report Writer? Well, to customize these types of reports. All right, so at this point, we've seen reports that were run from the NPR Report Writer tool, and we've also run reports from a menu. And I kind of hinted at this. One of the powerful aspects of a report writer is that we can attach custom reports to the application, typically to run in place of a standard report. Now, most applications allow for this, but the question of where and how, that would be answered by the specialist of that application. So some examples are, in pharmacy, we can attach reports to output labels or the MAR, the medication administration record. So we can have customs that would replace the standard labels or the standard MAR, and they would actually be attached within the pharmacy application. So that now when you run this routine to output labels in pharmacy, that custom is actually the report that's called. In lab, some examples are the specimen inquiries or custom cross-match cards. We can use customs to replace those standard reports. In admissions, examples are wristbands or face sheets. Those can be custom, or we can use the standard. RxM, an example is the script. We can have a custom script attached so that the custom is what generates and not the standard. So again, we have this ability to attach customs to the application so that customs output instead of standards, but exactly how they're attached and where, that would be answered by the application specialist. All right, so now that we've seen the Report Writer tool and we've seen some examples of the different types of reports and methods of running, we will now review the needed training by individuals to use this tool effectively. So for education, we offer a hands-on training at our Framingham facility. We offer webinar training such as this one. So we have different topics that we present using the webinar format. And we also have online training, which can be accessed through the product resource homepage. It's an Adobe Captivate so you could watch this Captivate, which covers the same information we do cover in the training. So before we really get into this education part, I think we should discuss, who should attend. And to kind of answer that, we'll look at, a structural setup for report writing support. So who at your site should be in charge of custom report writing? Typically, what we've seen others do is you might have, say, like 3 people from your IT department who will come to training. And then all report writer requests go through those individuals. And then you can, there is a limit to 3 per class, but you can send 3 1 month, 3 and the next time it's offered. So you can have more than these 3 individuals. You can have 6, say. But, you know, you have those 6 people responsible and everything else channels through them. If there's questions, then those individuals are free to, you know, contact us at Meditech for assistance. But again, this is just a model that we've seen work. You set certain people in charge, they get trained, and then they kind of support the reports, the custom reports. So if any new reports are requested or edits to existing custom reports are requested by end users, they would go through those individuals. So when choosing these individuals, you know, what type of personnel would be in charge of these reports? So typically, those with a more technical background, since this report writer tool is a programming tool, and we see that, you know, with a more technical background, you tend to be more proficient with the tool. For examples, our IT specialists would come to the training, but someone who's also familiar with the Meditech software. Since it is a programming tool, people who are comfortable with that technical material usually will do best. All right, so whoever, you know, then you decide who those people are and you send them to training, and again, they would then be responsible for supporting your custom reports. Now, the reason why we do stress education is because the report writer group here at Meditech does not write reports. We just help you with your report writing questions. So if you have a report that you're having problems with, we can help suggest changes to it. Maybe your report's crashing. We can, you know, review it to see what's the problem, give you suggestions on how to fix it, maybe suggest a correction to the code that won't make it crash anymore. So we can offer a lot of assistance, but we just don't write the reports. And again, that's why we stress the education portion. So the first class I'm going to talk about is our Report Writer Level 1 class. And this, again, is taught in the Framingham facility. It's recommended for all potential report writers. So if you're going to be involved with the report writer tool, we recommend the training, in-class training. This is a 5-day class, again, at our Framingham facility. And it teaches data structure, which is, you know, how all this information is stored in the hierarchy of how it's stored. So the class teaches the data structure and report writer techniques. The Level 1 class gives you a solid foundation to create most of your reports. So again, this is the recommended training. It's a hands-on class. You know, the instructors teaching are also report writers. We go through the training reference guide material, and so it's an interactive class. Then we have examples, and the examples are done in class, and if you have problems, we're right there in class to help you. So this is the recommended training. The Level 1 class. After the Level 1, you can attend the Level 2 class. This class is a 4-day class. Again, it's at our Framingham facility. It's recommended that customers who attend this class have at least 6 months of report writer experience and who have attended our Level 1 training. Excuse me. So we don't recommend coming to back-to-back classes. We recommend coming to Level 1, then using the report writer tool for a while, at least 6 months, before then coming to the level 2. The level 2 training is geared towards advanced techniques that will allow report writers additional options when writing their reports. Again, the level 2 is not required. So you learn techniques that make writing reports easier. The level 2 classes are typically smaller since not everyone will attend the level 2 after coming to the level 1. So the class sizes are usually smaller for the level 2, roughly maybe 6 people, versus level 1, which may be, a dozen people. Of course, sizes vary depending on time of year and all that. Now, I also made mention of, which I'm going to exit the presentation, I also made mention of the online training. So if I go to the product and resource homepage, which I can access this page going to www.meditech.com/PRRW for product resource report writer. Auto correct. So with that link, it would bring you here where you would select your platform. We're using client server here. So this brings me to the client server report writer product homepage. And in building and training, where my mouse is hovering, we have the training reference guides for the level 1 and level 2 training. And here's that online training. So if you click on that, it would bring you to the 27 units that are covered in the training. And each one is its own Adobe Captivate session. So if you wanted to cover data storage, you could watch this session on data storage. Again, it mimics what we do in class. It uses the same slides that we use to present in class, but you don't have that teacher-student interaction. It's the second best. We still recommend the in-class training, but if you can't get there or if you need a refresher, this is a great substitute. So we also have supplemental webinars. And the current topics that we're covering, in addition to this one you're listening to me today on, the intro to report writer, overview of report writer. These are the other topics that we're currently presenting: do loops and index files. And the way we have been working these webinars are we will present a topic for a certain period of time. And after so long, that presentation will then be retired. And new ones will take its place. So there will always be some current webinar topics. And then the ones that have been retired will then be accessible from the product resource homepage. So I believe the classroom and online is where, no, I'm sorry. Just looking for where we keep the retired ones. And then they're available as Captivate. One thing about if you have a topic that you're interested in, we do look for recommendations on topics. So feel free to give us a call or talk to your report writer specialist to give them, you know, your topic ideas that you would like to see presented as a webinar, and those, you know, those may become the webinars for next year. So feel free to give us your ideas on topics, and you never know, that might, you know, become a reality. These webinars, they're typically supplements to the level 1 training. I know this one is not, it's just an overview before you even come to training, but typically they're supplements to the level 1 training. So after you've been to the level 1 training, most of these topics would apply. They're taught as if you have attended, so certain concepts are assumed that you know. These topics are then, you know, we use these webinars to provide a more in-depth coverage of that one topic. The presentations are usually 1 to 2 hours long. Like I said, the topics are chosen by the report writer group, but if you do have requests, let them be known. Okay. The last was the last slide taught, well, not last slide, but the online training, which I just showed you. The Adobe Captivate sessions are available on our product and resource homepage. They are only available on the client server or 6X platform, but I do recommend, even if you're Magic, to watch them, because the screens are pretty much the same between platforms. They might look slightly different, but they basically function the same way. So if you need a review on a certain topic, by all means, review the client server, because it would also help with your in the Magic platform. And currently, just the level 1 training is available online. I don't know if there's any plans yet for making a Adobe Captivate for the level 2. I have not heard anything at this time for that. It is very time-consuming making these presentations, these Adobe Captivates for the classes. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, but maybe in the future it will be also included for level 2. So your additional resources would be the product and resource homepage, and that's the page I have been accessing here. So on this page, one of the tools you'll use most often once you learn report writer is the online data definition. We have all the fields that are accessible. So the application, you would pick your application, so maybe admissions, and then in admissions, we break down into DPM, so we might be looking at ADM PAT, and then these are all the segments in ADM PAT, and within a segment, we have all our fields. So these data depths or data definitions are available to us for, identifying the fields we're going to use on our report. So that's something that's commonly used on this page. We went over the training. These are the training guides. So this is the level 1 training guide. You could print off the whole training guide or just a unit at a time. This is what we use within the training, in-house training. Other useful things on this page, in addition to that training we covered, is application-specific information. When you come to this page, you can pick the app. So if I'm writing a report in an application I'm not that familiar with, I could come here and pick the application, and then there's some useful information, application facts, as it pertains to the app report writer. Okay, so I do recommend if you're ever working on a report in an application that you're not familiar with, that you should access this application-specific information page. Okay, that's the first one listed under educational material. Another resource for you with report writing is this Report Writer magazine archive. If I open that, there are magazine articles that have been written for Report Writer. So you can come here to search on the different topics, if it's related to data definitions or data formatting. You can kind of search here for different topics. Many times in a task, so if you open up a task with an issue, we might direct you to a magazine article. This covers exactly your question, so please, review it. Or you can head this way prior to opening up the task, because it might answer your question and negate the need for the task. All right, so there's several articles in here. We also have on the product resource homepage a link to the knowledge base. So you can always come to the knowledge base and do searches on different topics. And again, sometimes in the past we might direct your attention to one of the KB articles as it answers your question of the task. And we also have a report archive. Earlier, I was looking for the webinars that were retired and made into presentations online. It's under tutorials. So if you come in here, these are topics that have been retired and are now available here for review. So how to read a crash screen, finding data, troubleshooting no records found or missing records. These are topics that have been covered through webinars that are now available here for review. All right, sorry to, I just wanted to, now that I saw tutorials, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I forgot. All right, so I wanted to show you the report archive. So this link here, report archive, will bring you to the archive of all the custom reports. So we could search for a report that was written in client server.
using the report writer tool. I'm looking for, an admissions report in category. Might try a form. I could put a description or something to search on, but you would do a search and find a report, and these reports, for instance, this one, this particular ID number has all these reports attached to it, but you're allowed to download these and then upload them into your system. So you might want to visit the report archive before spending a lot of time creating a report. If you can find one that does exactly what you want, then you just save yourself a lot of time. Or maybe you find one that is very close to what you want. So again, saving a lot of time in the creation process, you would just now need to go in and make some modifications. All right, so that's the report archive to support. How do we as specialists in the group support the tool? So again, we don't write reports. So you don't expect us to be the ones creating the report. What we're here for is to offer guidance and suggestions. So you might be starting a report and you're not sure where you want to write the report. What application would I be writing in? So maybe we would direct you to, if that kind of information you would want to try to write out of this location. All right, so we can offer suggestions, guidance. Maybe you've written a report and you don't know how to get one last piece of information on it. Well, then we can review it and, offer suggestions, offer, some code to try to use, things like that. But the final, the responsibility of creating the report is in your hands. Now, we do work with the task system. A lot of times, you're free to give us a call at any time. You call your report writer specialist with any questions. Sometimes those questions are not difficult and can be answered over the phone. But most of the time, they're not. The report writer, being very technical, you might have a question that needs research or we have to figure out the code that you would use. Things like that, we would have to spend more time on, so we would recommend a task for more difficult questions. But again, you can call us anytime. Some questions we can answer quickly over the phone. Others, we might request that you open a task with more detailed information so that we can research and get an answer to you. So we are a group that uses the task system, and we do get quite a bit of tasks. So when you do open up a task, your task will be then put on a work list. And we have a specialist in the group that works the list daily. It's a different specialist each day, but their job is to take the task off the list, they review it, they try to answer the question, and then they reassign the task to an available specialist. So I might get a task assigned to me today that was on the list that you opened. When it's assigned to me, like I said, the person working the list will try to answer the question. So it might be an easy question and that they can answer, and there you go. You have your answer and you're off running with it. But if you didn't provide enough information in your task, then maybe they cannot answer the question right away. So then it would get assigned to me, and then I would proceed from that point on to help you. So I guess my point is, when you open up tasks, try to be as detailed as possible. Sometimes you get your answer quickly that way. If you open up a task and say, help, my report's crashing, and that's all you tell us, then, you know, we're going to have to come back and say, okay, are you working in Tester Live? What is the name of your report? When you run it, what prompts, you know, are you hit with, and what do you enter for those prompts? Basically, we would need to recreate it to see it, see it happen. Then we can figure out why it's happened. So, again, try to be as detailed as possible when opening up Report Writer tasks. And we do, again, support customers over the phone. So anytime you have questions, feel free to pick up the phone, contact your Report Writer specialist directly. You know, they might be able to answer the question. If not, they'll recommend that you open a task. So that is my overview of the Report Writer group/tool. So, and it brings me to my final breaking point for questions. So if you have any questions on anything I presented today, feel free to chat them to me.